Thank you. Welcome, council, staff. It is indeed a pleasure to be able to be back in chambers and seeing all my fellow councilors and senior staff face to face. It's been a long year and a half, and it's such a pleasure to be back here. Not under the normal circumstances, but still we're seeing each other, and that's just great. So if you would join me, and I will read the council commitment.
So, Your Worship, I'd ask that everyone remain seated just for the mask situation.
Lovely. So we are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Penetanguishene and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. We ask that all in attendance and those who could not be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we all be strengthened in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, the knowledge, will, and understanding to preserve the good fortune of the town for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to approval of the agenda. And it is that the agenda of the regular council meeting of October 13, 2021 be approved as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor LaRose, Councillor Cummings, all in favor. That's passed. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest, if anyone so has, so declare or at the appropriate time. Bringing us to number 6, public meeting, which we have none. Brings us to 7, deputations and presentations. And this evening we have Jay Anstey from Baker Tilly, Canada, presentation of the 2020 draft audited financial statement and year-end report, and that the 2020 draft audited financial statements be approved. We will hear from Jay first before I call for the vote on it. So if Carrie, do we have Jay coming in attendance, coming on screen?
Thank you, Your Worship. He's just entering the meeting through Zoom now. Sarah's going to pull him up and get him ready to speak any moment. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Hi, Your Worship, and Sarah, I am here now. I was able to get in. Thank you for your patience.
Welcome, Jay.
I'm just pulling up my screen here so I can go over my presentation tonight. And Your Worship, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you. So I am here tonight to present the audited 2020 consolidated financial report. You'll remember we were here back in May of 2021 presenting the 2019 audited financial report, and as soon as we issued that report, we got right to working on the 2020 audit, and here tonight looking for a recommendation from council to approve the financial statements as they are presented in tonight's agenda package. I will go over the financial statements themselves and the summary of the financial indicators of the town of Penetanguishene. But as far as the audit results go, we are presenting, again, a clean, unqualified opinion as we have in prior years, meaning that the financial statements are free from material misstatement in all material respects. They are in draft form, as I've mentioned, looking for council approval tonight. 2 additional pieces of information that will be forthcoming and sent directly to council and management are a management letter and our audit reporting letter. And both of those letters do indicate that there are no particular areas of concern with regards to internal controls or weaknesses that we did identify during the course of our audit. Looking at the statement of operations, and this is a brief summary of a much more detailed statement that you will find in your agenda package. But from the activity of the 2020 fiscal year, obviously 2020 was a trying year for everybody. Obviously in March, the COVID pandemic did hit and caused significant changes in all business operations, and municipalities were not immune to the effects of COVID-19. Obviously, lots of changes going on. But overall operating revenues of $18.8 million, still just slightly higher than the $18.6 million collected through 2019. The main increase in the 2020 revenues was from taxation, about a $600,000 increase in taxation revenue collected, that being from the 2.5% rate increase that was implemented, as well as some increase in property values that results in higher taxation revenue being collected. And then also we saw in the environmental department, largely in the wastewater area, there was again a rate increase there where we saw an increase in wastewater revenue of about $275,000. These increases were offset by, as I mentioned, some of the COVID impacts, and one particular area that all municipalities did see an impact was obviously the recreation department, and revenue was down $300,000 year over year, largely in the areas of the arenas and other recreational activities that just weren't happening through the lockdowns of 2020. So we saw a decrease there, as well as in government grants. There was some, it's called safe restart funding, that the municipality received for the safe reopening as things did start to open up through 2020 after some COVID lockdowns. But in 2019, there was some additional operating funding that came in the form of, it was a modernization grant that the province had issued, a one-time grant. So saw a decrease year over year there in operating revenues. So overall, operating revenues ended up about similar year over year in the 2020 year compared to 2019. And as well as operating expenses. And again, we saw slight increases through most departments in operating expenses. The one area that we did see a significant decrease was the recreation department, where activities weren't happening. So whether it's redeployment of staff or some seasonal staff not hired, just decrease in overall operating costs in the recreation department of about $400,000. So it brings us down to the net revenues. That's how I tend to look at the operations of the year for the 2020 year of $35,000. So considering an $18 million operating year, about a break-even year. And then we move into the capital revenues, and those are funds received directly for the purchase and acquisition of tangible capital assets to give us our annual surplus of $1.4 million. It is important to note that when you line up the budget with actual results, or when you line up more so the budget displayed here and in the financial statements with those approved by council, this budget does have to be reclassified to conform with external reporting requirements, whereas council approves more internal based for things like the acquisition of tangible capital assets. So they might not exactly line up when you're comparing the two, but they've been reformatted for financial statement purposes. So another quick look at operating revenues for the year, and this is by department, and just seeing where the town of Penetanguishene does receive the majority of its funding, and 62% does come from in the form of property taxes. And if you compare this to surrounding municipalities, we see it in the range of kind of the 59 to 63% range. So Penetanguishene does receive a good chunk of its revenue from property tax, and it is in the higher end compared to some other surrounding municipalities. User charges of 27% form 27% of revenue collected. User charges in other municipalities we see in the 24 to 30% range. So again, right in the general range that we do tend to see those types of fees collected, and most of those are in the form of water and wastewater fees, and then other recreational types of revenue. One area to note is provincial and federal grants form 5% of, or just over 5% of revenue collected. Other municipalities do receive, it's more in the range of 3 to 4%. So Penetanguishene does receive a higher percentage of its total revenues from government grants, which is great to see, to take advantage of government grants, but also something to be cognizant about, as so sometimes those, as new governments do come in, then those funding formulas do change, and if they were to decrease by any means, then obviously we'd need to find an alternate funding source for those revenues. And then a look at the operating expenses by the department or by segment. The main area that the town of Penetanguishene does spend its money, or the biggest area, is protection services, and that's mainly on the police contract. So 28.5% of the money spent goes towards policing. This is on the higher end of the range that we do see in other municipalities, kind of in the 20 to 29% range. So there are some other municipalities that are up at that 29% range, but the town of Penetanguishene is on the higher end there. Transportation, again, we see in the range of kind of 17 to 23%. So Penetanguishene is on the higher end when it comes to the transportation department, mainly on the roads and snow clearing and roads maintenance, that side, that type of activity. The area that Penetanguishene is on the lower end is the environmental segment, that other municipalities we see in the 20 to 27% of their expenditures go towards environmental, and Penetanguishene is down at 19.7%, so one of the lowest that we do see. So an efficient environmental water and wastewater department. Looking at the financial position as of December 31st, 2020, and then also some financial indicators as well, starting with financial assets. These are either cash or items that we are going to convert to cash. So as the municipality collects its taxes or other accounts receivable, these are all items that are eventually going to be turned into cash. So we see total financial assets of $19 million, up from just over $15 million. So nice to see an increase in liquidity. And when we look at the financial indicators, the municipality could cover its current liabilities 2 times over with the amount of cash it has on hand. Where we see that the government would like to see at least having 50% of the liabilities being able to be covered. So no liquidity issues that we see within the municipality as of the end of 2020. On the liability side of the financial statements, on the statement of financial position, largely similar balances year over year. You see $20 million fairly consistent. There was an actuarial evaluation done this year on the employee future benefits line, and so those are for retirement benefits that are going to have to be funded in a future year. So that's why we do see a slight increase there. The solid waste landfill post-closure liability, this is another estimate that in I think 7 years now, there are some costs coming up that are going to have to be funded at that time. And when I do get into the accumulated surplus area, you will note this is an unfunded liability. So in that year, we will expect to see an expense, a cash outlay, which is slowly being expensed through the financial statements. And then finally, long-term liabilities, no new liabilities incurred during the year. And a different look at the liabilities, the financial indicator being the total amount spent on long-term debt, that being repayment of principal as well as the interest costs, compared to the total revenues of the municipality. So how much do we of the money we collect do we end up spending on debt? And in 2020, it was 5.6% of the revenue collected was put towards debt. This is slightly higher than what the provincial indicators would consider a low risk, but just over that amount, well below the high risk of 10%. So still some room before we have to worry about risk level, but just something that has increased in the past number of years with the Main Street reconstruction loan and the sewage treatment plant debenture as well coming online, but those are now slowly being repaid down over the agreed upon terms of the debentures. I always like to mention that overall net debt of the organization or net financial assets, if financial assets were greater than liabilities. Again, we saw liabilities sitting fairly consistent year over year and an increase in assets. So slowly bring that net debt closer to that sought after net financial asset position, but overall well below the anywhere near the high risk area, and it's considered a very low risk area for the town as of December 31st, 2020. And then lastly, when we get down to the non-financial assets section of the financial position, this is mainly made up of the tangible capital assets of the organization. During the 2020 year, there was $1.2 million of assets added, and a couple of the bigger assets were the County Road 93 multi-use trail and the Harbor Point Phase 2 drainage improvements. The additions are offset by the amortization of assets, so decreasing them over their useful life, and amortization expense for the year was $2.9 million. I always like to look at the asset consumption ratio, which is how much of the useful life of the capital assets of the municipality have been used up or depreciated, and only 28% of the useful life has been used up. So on the very low end of in a risk range or compared to a provincial average. So some nice young assets and no aging concerns really. And taking a look at it by type of asset, we see the buildings, the useful life of buildings of the municipality are only 20% used of their useful life. The areas of concern that we'd want to be looking at next are machinery and equipment and vehicles, but still sitting at 50%. All of these areas tend to be on the low end of where we're seeing the useful life of some of the aging assets in other municipalities. Linear assets are the roads, and then the water sewer infrastructure under the roads, as well as structures, includes things like storm structures, very new and in the grand scheme of things in the municipality. So no particular concerns there. Obviously, some assets we still need to keep an eye on an asset by asset basis, but overall as a whole, no depletion of assets that we're concerned about. The accumulated surplus, you'll find this, the 92 million that you'll see at the bottom of this chart. It's at the bottom of the financial position, the statement of operations, and it is further broken down in note 14 as we see here. And always like to say that the accumulated surplus is not cash, it's not investments. This is the overall total assets after liabilities that the municipality has, and the majority of those $81 million are invested in those tangible capital assets, those buildings, the roads, the water and wastewater infrastructure. So the large majority is invested in those. Overall, there's an unallocated surplus of about $1 million, which we will see allocated to reserves or offset against other future expenses. The unfunded liabilities that you see here are those employee future benefits and that waste post-closure cost that I mentioned in the liability section. And then finally, amounts that have been allocated to reserves of $11 million. And a closer look at those reserves for changes year over year, for the most part, pretty similar. For the current purposes, reserve we'll see is increased from some budgeted levies that were taxation levies that were implemented through the year and transferred to reserves, as well as the annual surplus that was ultimately transferred to reserves. And then in the reserves set aside by council for specific purposes, the main thing here to remember is this is related to the sale of the hydro electricity utility, and setting those funds aside, and then slowly using those to finance internally other new purchases. So the wharf was the addition through the 2020 year to officially come online in 2021, which we'll see repayment starting in the 2021 fiscal year. Those are the financial highlights I wanted to review. I'm happy to field any questions from council at this time.
Thank you, Jay. Members of council, does anyone have any questions through to Jay? Deputy Mayor?
Not a question, Your Worship, just the consolidated presentation that he made this evening. Will we get a copy of that?
I can provide a copy of that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No, there being no further questions, then Jay, thank you very much for extensive report. And with that, I will ask the recommendation that the 2020 draft audited financial statements be approved. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Sainama and Councillor Mayette, all in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So we will now move on to adoption of minutes not already confirmed, and it is recommended action that the following minutes of council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. Council September 8, 2021, and Special Council September 8, 2021. Mover and a seconder. Councillor LaRose and Deputy Mayor, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Consent agenda, we have none. Matters for consideration, a verbal update from the Chief Administrative Office re COVID-19 municipal impacts. So Mr. CAO, if you would, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we've done in the past, what I'd like to do is just run council through a little bit of a verbal update, which is an update that is being provided since our last regular council meeting, which was September 8th. So essentially over the last month, the province has enacted a number of changes with respect to COVID-19. September 14th, they expanded the eligibility for third doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to include additional vulnerable populations. 3 days later, on the 17th of September, they announced 8 new Ontario health teams throughout the province, which essentially are structured to help respond to the COVID-19 pandemic as it continues to evolve. In North Simcoe's case, the Ontario Health Team is made up of the 4 municipalities of Midland, Penetanguishene, Tiny, and Tay, as well as Christian Island. On the 24th of September, the province cautiously eased capacity limits at a number of different locations, and that took effect on the 25th of September, which essentially in general terms allowed 50% capacity at a number of locations. And in the municipal case, primarily the impact was at our sports facility or our arena. On the 8th of October, which was this past Friday, they again cautiously lifted those capacity limits at a number of different types of venues, vis-a-vis, in our case, the arena, to include 100% capacity. And a little bit later on, I'll touch on what we're doing at our particular arena. From the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit, they did conduct a proof of vaccination inspection initiative that was conducted on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of October, and also did some public education and enforcement. From the municipal standpoint, and I'll start off with the arena, there's been a number of changes since my last verbal update at the arena. One of which, through a provincial regulation, we are now required to check for proof of vaccination from our patrons. In addition, in accordance with the provincial regulations, we currently do allow 200 patrons in the facility, and we're leveraging and utilizing the 50% allowance, essentially. The concession stand manager has resumed use of their space at the arena, as well as with respect to the most recent changes, allowing 100% capacity. Our team is currently consulting internally, not only with the rec department and the staff themselves that are essentially responsible for that, but also Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit, our emergency control group, and also other municipal recreation teams. I would say that all in all, a job well done to not only staff, but also the public. We've seen a lot of cooperation and a lot of understanding from the public through these trying times. It's a new initiative and it's new changes that I think the public has adapted to very well. And I would be remiss if I didn't suggest that our staff has done an excellent job at essentially pivoting on fairly quick turnaround to ensure that we are in compliance as a municipality. Another component at the arena, we're starting to get back into some programming, and one in particular is our shuffleboard program has started back up, which is great news. I think we've had overwhelming response, as well as they are looking at implementing a few other programs at the arena as well, and also rentals, which is exciting news. With respect to our town dock and our wharf, our harbor master's seasonal employment contract is nearing completion this week. And so, as everyone can appreciate, there's a lot of seasonal maintenance that's happening in terms of dock removal and other activities down there. Our museum and archives facility has had fantastic cooperation as well as attendance. I think we've had lineups out the door, which is great news for that facility. And there are a number of different events and programs that they're planning. In particular, I believe they have a fairly exciting Halloween event that's upcoming. With respect to the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit and the vaccination site, the health unit is working their way through planning for a vaccination program for individuals between the ages of 5 and 11. So they've started the conversation with municipalities and starting to work their way through what that might look like and how municipalities might be able to play a role. As of today, Simcoe-Muskoka residents, there has been a little under 86% of Simcoe-Muskoka residents that have received their first dose, and a little under 81% that have received their second dose, as well as 86% of individuals 12 years of age and older that have received at least one dose of their vaccine. So I think these numbers are very promising and very, very good for our area. As council is aware and the public is aware, we did roll out on October 4th a staff administration COVID-19 vaccination policy that took effect. Ultimately, this policy's purpose and scope is for the betterment of not only our staff, but also our patrons and our residents. And we've had excellent uptake and excellent feedback from our staff with respect to that policy thus far. And certainly we don't anticipate anything to the contrary based on the opportunities that we've had and engagement that we've done with our staff. In addition, there's a draft policy on this evening's committee agenda for council committees and boards that, of course, Committee of the Whole will entertain a little bit later on this evening. I guess the last thing I would say is, as we continue to confront the fourth wave, our control group, as I've noted before, continues to stay abreast of the situation, and certainly through our CEMC, Fire Chief Ryan, certainly keeps us updated with sometimes daily, but sometimes a little bit less frequently, updates and information. And it really is an opportunity for our control group, which is consisting of staff across the organization, an opportunity to really stay close to the situation and make adjustments as needed. So with that, Your Worship, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments from council.
Okay, members of council, do we have any questions through the CAO? There appears to be none, so I will ask that the CAO's verbal update be received for information. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Levy and Councillor Saint-Amand, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So moving on to B, the proclamation of Small Business Week. So I will read the proclamation first. Council of the Town of Penetanguishene declares the week of October 17 to October 23rd in the town as Small Business Week, and we encourage all residents to support our local business community. Council recognizes the importance of small business in building a great community and the many contributions to the local economy. Small Business Week is a yearly celebration for over 42 years, organized by the Business Development Bank of Canada. Over the past 18 months, several new businesses have opened in the town, and I've had the pleasure of welcoming them on behalf of council and staff. Council is committed in their support for businesses as identified in the community strategic plan, which is to nurture the retention and expansion of existing businesses, and with our economic development partners, invite existing businesses to discuss specific actions the town could take to help them to expand their markets and enhance their success. Please join us in celebration of entrepreneurs, hardworking small business owners, and their staff. And with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder on the proclamation read that the Council of the Town of Penetanguishene proclaim the week of October 17 to 23 as Small Business Week in the town of Penetanguishene. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Clue and Councillor Cummings. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving us on to C, which is My Main Street Local Business Accelerator Program. And I would probably ask Andrea, our planner, if she would give us a little overview of this before I ask for the vote.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council. You do have a staff report that was prepared by our planner, Owen Taylor, that does go into some details about the program in which we're hoping council will support. But the program is actually a brand new launched. It's a partnership between the Economic Development Council of Ontario and the Canadian Urban Institute, in that there will be almost $24 million made available to Southern Ontario municipalities to take advantage of the two different streams of this program. The report we've identified and it's been discussed through the Business Recovery Task Force is to apply for the Main Street Ambassador stream. And this would be an opportunity for the town to receive $50,000 towards that person's salary, as well as about $7,500 that could go towards expenses in that role. And so that would allow for the municipality to hire that person in that position for a year, and they would do on the ground business support, as well as completing a gap study that is a requirement of the program. So in that role, we would have a dedicated economic development position. The other exciting opportunity for our businesses is that up to 10, 5 existing and 5 new, could receive $10,000 each. If they are successful in either coming to our community or branching or expanding their markets. So it's an opportunity for our business communities to almost get $100,000 worth of funding. There's not repayable debt or anything like that. So it's an opportunity that I think we can't pass up. And for those reasons, we are asking council directly to support staff's application to the program. It is a first come, first serve. And so we're hoping to get in there early. And they also will give us a response within 2 weeks. And so we should hear back quite timely. And they will also give us feedback if our application, if it fails, if they feel like there's something that would support it further, and we can reapply. So there's still opportunities there. So it's a great program and we're really excited about it and hoping for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Would members of council have any questions through to Andrea? Councillor LaRose?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering if you could run us through what this would cost us.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to Councillor LaRose. So the application and the grant program asks for 25% of the cost, so in-kind contribution from the municipality. So in the report, we've heard from them that could consist of coaching and mentoring in the role, office space, cost, printing, advertising, some of the traditional sort of operation of the role and administrative cost would be our in-kind contribution towards this grant. So some of the matters already exist in our budget under the Community Development Fund, or sorry, not the fund, the budget that would deal with advertising or marketing. So those money is already in there and that would be our in-kind contribution for the program. There's no new funds that we would need to commit.
Okay, there being none, then I will call for the motion that the staff submit an application to the My Main Street Local Business Accelerator Program. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Levy and Councillor Sanema, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving us on to 11, presentation and consideration of report, Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole report, September 8, 2021, that the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Recreation and Community Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Cummings and Deputy Mayor.
Your worship.
Does anyone have anything that they wish to pull around? Okay,
Your worship.
yes,
The motion is by the deputy mayor. I was not here the last meeting, so I cannot.
good point.
Make the
Okay,
motion?
but you can second it. Yeah, okay. So moved by Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Cummings. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Planning and Development Services section be approved. Councillor Levy and Councillor Vadevonker, mover and a seconder. All in favor? And that is carried. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Transportation Environmental Services section be approved. Does anyone have anything that they wish to pull? There not being, mover and a seconder, Councillor Clue and Councillor LaRose, all in favor. Thank you. And finally, that the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Finance and Corporate Services sections be approved. Does anyone have anything there that they wish to pull? There not being, movers Councillor Sanema and Councillor Mayat, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Moving us on to 12, presentations and consideration of reports, special committees. Special Committee of the Whole report, September 22nd, 2021, that the recommendations contained within the Special Committee of the Whole report related to the Finance and Corporate Services sections be approved. Does anyone have anything that they wish to? Not being, mover and a seconder, Councillor Sanema and Councillor Mayat, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Motions of which notice has been previously given, there are none. 14, notices of motion, none. Consideration of bylaws. So we have bylaw to amend bylaw 2012-35 to regulate construction, demolition, and changes of use, permits for buildings, structures, and all other related services within the town of Penetanguishene. Bylaw 2021-46 being a bylaw to establish a 1-foot reserve on Burns Crescent, legally described as blocks 109 and 110, registered plan 51M-453 as a dedicated public highway, and bylaw 2021-47, a bylaw to amend the town's procedural bylaw 2019-25 to have a maximum of 2 presentations and delegations per meeting, and that the council of the town of Penetanguishene introduce the following bylaws: 2021-45, 2021-46, 2021-47, and bylaws be read a first time and deemed to be read a second and third time and carried. Mover, Councillor Rose, seconder, Councillor Mayat, all in favor. That brings us to 16, which is the question period from media and the public, and there are none. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Sorry, it would be a matter of procedure, and the clerk may be able to answer this. I'm in agreement with the actual bylaws, but the last bylaw I disagree with and would not vote for. The delegations of 2, we could possibly have a delegation of 5 per night, and then it says, with exception of the CAO or the mayor introducing other delegations. That would have been fine when we were meeting the 2nd and 4th week of the month, but these meetings get to be really long if we have 2 or more than 2 per meeting, because we could have possibly 5 a night right now. And I'd like to stick with just the 2. So I'm not sure how we do that.
Madam Clerk, can you give some clarification on that one, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Cummings, I think you missed the meeting where this item was discussed. I think it was discussed quite significantly, and the decision was made to restrict it by the 2 per meeting, with the caveat that the mayor and the CAO have the authority to to approve anything outside of that. I understand that's not what you were looking for, but we are at the point where the bylaw is to be passed. And as far as I know, the vote has been taken. So there's nothing more to do except for request an additional change to the procedural bylaw through FCS and get council to agree to that and continue to make additional changes to the procedural bylaw.
That's the information I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, so if we're ready to proceed, a mover and a seconder I have, and all in favor. So it's carried. And we do come to question period from media and public, and I don't see any out there. Announcements and inquiries. One announcement that I might make is that if any one of you have a chance to visit our library and see the decorations there for for Halloween, it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. It's just a marvel to see. So if you have an opportunity, get in to see it. It is really something. Other announcements and inquiries, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
You don't recognize the face. Thank you, Worship. I have an inquiry. I have, since the new garbage containers have been delivered in town, I've had several people come to me and say, we have now become a garbage can city and there's nowhere to put these containers. And they want to know who they can go to. And I know County Council is going to have a meeting shortly, and there may be an exchange program, that type of thing, but somebody wants to know who the contact people would be to register their complaints.
Well, I would say probably the best source for that would be right to the county, to Mr. Rob McCullough. And as you pointed out, Councillor Cummings, and needless to say, I just got another one today. Places like the Park Bridge, they're up in arms about them. People that in apartments, and yes, on October the 26th, following our council and committee of the whole meeting, we will be holding a workshop at 1 o'clock, and I expect it'll probably be a long afternoon. But in the meantime, if you do have any complaints about them, best thing to do is just direct them to Rob McCullough, the director at the county.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, we could suggest that people call the service desk at the county. I do think they have a special line that's been set up to deal with this. So it's just service. I should have the number, but I
Well,
don't have it.
it's
right
basically
on.
all they have to do, Madam Deputy Mayor, is call the county number and
Yeah.
ask for the service desk.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good. Your worship.
Councillor Klug?
Thank you, Your Worship. An announcement. This is a reminder that we were fortunate enough to receive funding from Canadian Heritage to bring a traveling exhibit to our museum entitled Unmasking Influenza. It's about the 1918 Spanish influenza. It's very interesting. It's at our museum until the 14th of December, so 2 more months to see that one. The museum is also holding a Meet the Spirits event this Friday night at St. James on the Line Cemetery. Both tour times, however, are sold out. It looks like it will be a very popular event. And there's also a spooktacular event at the museum October 30th, so the Saturday. You need to pre-register for that. There's a haunted house, scavenger hunt, take-home crafts, and that sort of thing. So those are very interesting things happening at our museum.
Very good. Further announcements, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to announce that there is a pop-up clinic that is taking place at our museum, at our library tomorrow. So give you an opportunity to get an injection and look at all the beautiful displays of Halloween. It's great. I'm not sure of the time, but I would say 11 probably to 4 would be a good time. Thank you.
Okay. Further announcements or inquiries, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add on to just provide some information with respect to the earlier inquiry from Councillor Cummings. With respect to the solid waste management new carts at the county, It's service@simco.ca, or the 1-800 number for Service Simco is 1-800-263-3199. I know our staff are fielding lots of inquiries and doing our best to address them with the information that we have, but there are times, unfortunately, where we do provide this information to residents. I just thought I would share it for those that might be listening with us this evening. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Further announcements or inquiries? There being none, we will move on to our confirmation bylaw, and that the confirmation bylaw 2021-48 be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Mover and the seconder, Councillor LaRose and Councillor Sainama, all in favor? The motion to adjourn, Councillor Cummings, all in favor? Thank you. Council, we are adjourned for our regular council meeting. Madam Clerk, will we move into committee of the whole immediately, or do we take a break?
Your worship, if you're comfortable taking a break, Sarah and I are prepared to put the screen up for a brief 5 minutes, or if it's your call, if you'd like to continue.
Well, I will say, I will make it a call to members of council. Are we wanting a 5-minute break, or are we going to carry on?
Yeah.
Carry on. Okay, good. So with that, we will move into our committee of the whole, a call to order and approval of the agenda, and the recommended action that the committee of the whole agenda for October 13, 2021 be approved as presented. Mover and the seconder, Madam Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vadeboncoeur, all in favor. And that is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, if anyone so has, they may declare or at the appropriate time. Presentations and delegations, all sections, we have none. Council information package. Council information package, September 17, 2021 and October 8, 2021, and that the council information packages for September 17, 2021 and October 8, 2021, having been given due consideration, be received for information. Mover and a seconder. Councillor LaRose and Councillor Cummings, all in favor. And that is carried. Moving on to section A, transportation environmental services. And with that, I will pass it on to Councillor Klug.
Thank you, Your Worship. On our consent agenda tonight, we have one item. The Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks report regarding La Page Drive drinking water system inspection report. The recommended action is that the following consent agenda items, having been given due consideration, be received for information. Are there any questions, comments? I believe our director is on the line. Should there be any? Seeing none, do we have a mover? Councillor Cummings, seconder, Councillor Sainama, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. There are no matters for consideration this evening, and we're on to our referrals. We have 2 items still remaining on this list: 2022 budget request for roadwork at Robert Street East in Dufferin, and stormwater management best practices and engineering standards. If that looks good to council, the recommended action is that the Transportation and Environmental Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levy, seconder. Councillor Sainama, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Question period from media and public. Seeing none, I will turn it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Klug. And that will bring us to section 7B, Recreation and Community Services, and I will pass it to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under our consent agenda, we have 7 items: a memo to council regarding the age-friendly collaboration meeting, Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes of June 10th, Trails Committee meeting minutes, June 22nd, Community Wellbeing Community Committee meeting minutes, May 6th, Tourist Information Center 2021 summary, that's RCS 2021-28, and Rendezvous Champlain Committee 2015 recognition, and the Martin Valley Park Engineering. The recommended action is that the following consent agenda items, having been given due consideration, be received for information. Any questions or concerns? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just the Martin Valley Park I just wanted to make sure and encourage our residents to look at the concept and comment if they haven't. It's a big project. I think that'll take place in the future. It is phased, but very important to have input. So members of council, if you have input, please send your comments to the recreation director, and certainly would encourage the public to please have a look. I do believe it's up on our connect.ca Penetang machine, so you can have a good look at it and have comments. It's ambitious.
To say the least.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions, concerns? I need a mover. Deputy Mayor, second. Councillor Sanama, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Under matters for consideration, item 1 on our matters for consideration is the day camp review. The recommended action is that staff bring forward a new 4-year agreement between the town and BGC North Simcoe for day camp operations and the necessary bylaw for council approval, and that the CAO and Director of Recreation and Community Services are hereby authorized to make minor alterations to the agreement that does not substantially change its content, with the exception of expanding programming capacity in municipal facilities as outlined in the staff report. I need a mover. Get it on the floor. Councillor Rose, seconded Councillor Vadaboncourt. Are there any questions or concerns? We have our director here this evening. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Number 2 on our list is the Gateway Angels project update. I'm going to ask that the director give us some information. This is a complicated report, and I'm sure there's been questions asked. If we could just get the director just to give us an overview, and then we will, sorry, I should get it on the table first, and then we'll go from there. The recommended action here is that the town of Penetang Machines proceed with the purchase of number 429 County Road 93 from the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce for the Municipal Gateway Project as outlined under option 1 of the staff report, and that $58,000 required for the acquisition be funded from the Community Development Fund Reserve. I'll ask the director to give us some information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have some discussion today about this report, and we believe that there is that council would like to have further conversation about the purchase price that has been included in the motion. And as such, we're recommending at this time that the report be referred back to staff so that we can bring it forward at an in-camera session in the near future.
Thank you. Now, as for procedure, Madam Clerk, I've read the recommended action, but we haven't had a mover or seconder. So do we make the motion to refer back to staff?
Councillor Cummings, I would make the motion that we refer back to staff. I'm looking for a seconder.
All right, so we have a
Councillor
seconder, Deputy
Sainamon.
Mayor,
Okay.
and all in favor of that motion or questions before we do that? Councillor Levy?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I have a question. We discussed this at planning section this morning, and both Councillor Vadaboncourt and I recall 20 years ago when the Penetang Machine Tiny Chamber of Commerce joined forces with the Midland Chamber of Commerce to become the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce. That land, which had once belonged to the town of Penetang Machine and was given to our chamber, the Penetang Tiny Chamber, it wasn't supposed to be transferred.
Councillor Levy, a point of order. We are going to move it to a referral back to staff. So those discussions will all take place at the time.
Okay.
And another point that I might point out is that the town of Penetang Machine never did own that land. It was owned by Penetang Machine Tiny Chamber of Commerce.
I just wanted to ask if that had been part of the discussion or if the title had been seen. Am I
No,
allowed to
and
ask that?
it will be all part of the discussion.
Oh, well, Brian asked if there was questions, so I asked my question. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that, we call for the vote. All in favor? If you have any other questions or concerns, please refer back to the director and she can certainly get the answers for us. Thank you. Item C is the referrals to upcoming agenda. We have two. And the recommended action is that the Recreation and Community Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. Do we have any additions or? We did discuss the outsourcing of the day camp. Do we need to keep that in there? That was addressed in a report earlier. No, we don't need to. Okay, we can drop that one then. Any additions? No, then I ask for a mover. Councillor Rose, seconder, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Call for vote. All in favor? Thank you. Questions from the media and public? Seeing none, back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings, and we'll move on to 8, Section C, Planning and Community Development Services, and I will pass it to Councillor Levy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We'll start with the consent agenda, and we have a list here, including Huronia Animal Control, memo to Council re third quarter Planning and Community Development Department update, memo to Council re Business Recovery Task Force meeting number 16, memo to Council re Queen's Court Development Appeal, and the Bylaw Department Monthly Activity Report, September 2021, Notice of Appeal Rezoning Bylaw Amendment Application 123 Robert Street East, Penetanguishene. Does anyone want to have any of these pulled before we give the rest of them approval? Deputy Mayor Dubo?
I don't want to pull, but I just would like to point out that our planning department has been extremely busy. And when you read that report, it certainly shows just what's going on in that department. So I just wanted to mention that our staff in that department are working very hard. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment, Madam Deputy Mayor. And yes, Councillor Santamont.
Thank you. I would like to just, I don't know if I pull it or if we just want to ask a question about the zoning bylaw amendment for 123 Robert Street East. I was just curious with the notice of appeal. It's now related to back to the 22 townhouses and the 11 rental units when we'd had a discussion about semis. So
Right.
I'm just curious as to what.
I would suggest then if you would pull that, please, we deal with the rest and get an explanation from the planner as we heard today at section meeting. Is that okay with it?
Yep.
Okay. So if there's no one else wants to pull any of this, I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cummings, Councillor Vadavant-Court. All those in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. Oh, there she goes without me even asking her to. Yes, just an explanation of that last one.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Levy, through you to Councillor Santamont. So this is really just a notice to council that we have received this appeal. It is only for the zoning application and we still have an active plan of subdivision application. My understanding, however, is that it is the appeal of the original application. So this would go back to the townhouses and that the semi-detached are off the table, my understanding of it. But there will be a future report that will get into some of those details. This was just to make sure council was aware that an appeal was filed. And under the act, we are to now notify the Ontario Land Tribunal and we'll hear more details in the coming weeks from them as to next steps.
Seeing no further questions, I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Vadavon, Counselor Cummings, all those in favor? And carry. Thank you very much. B, under matters for consideration, excuse me, Economic Advisory Committee and terms of reference. So this is simply the terms of reference that staff is looking at to set up the new Economic Advisory Committee. And so I would ask for a mover and a seconder to get on the floor. Councilor Vadavon, Deputy Mayor Dubo. Any discussion on this? Yes, Councilor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question would be, how does this be autonomous from our other Economic Development Committee that we have for North Simcoe?
I would ask the director to respond to that. Thank you, Brian.
So thank you very much through you, Councilor Levy, to Councilor Cummings. So the Economic Development Corporation North Simcoe is a board, and then it is a regional type of economic development organization. And so they do sort of set their own work plan and such with this. Our intention with this Economic Development Committee actually has two roots. The first one goes back to a former committee, the Downtown Improvement Committee. And if council recalls, at the beginning of this council's term, we did take through a report to take a look at the operation and the actions of that committee and to ratify them, is I think what we called our staff report. And through that report, we put a hold on continuing with that committee until we could understand really what its role was going to be. The second piece of this committee would be that it's going to replace the Business Recovery Task Force. The Business Recovery Task Force was an ad hoc committee that was struck really to deal with the impacts of COVID. And we are hoping that we are through the majority of those impacts. And so for those two reasons, and through the discussions through the BRNE study that was just done, support for a new town-devoted Economic Advisory Committee with the lead being our local businesses was being recommended to be done. And this would be a closer coordination from the municipal level directly to our business, as opposed to a larger regional level that the ED&S does. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director. I would just add further to that the EDCNS, although is starting to focus a little bit on the service sector and the retail sector, is primarily manufacturing, farming, and as I said, they're starting through the pandemic. It showed the need to really help our businesses out as much as possible. So there's a bit of movement there, but this would deal with all businesses in Penetanguishene. Madam Clerk?
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. I just noticed that the two motions for these two items for matters for consideration aren't showing up on the agenda and therefore weren't read. And to no fault of yours, I know you did attempt to get a mover and a seconder, but I just want to make sure we read that motion, which I can read for you.
Thank you.
And so that we can proceed with mover and seconder, both for this item and the next item. I'll assist you with both of those because they aren't showing up on your printed agenda. So this item is Economic Advisory Committee terms of reference. And the motion is, the recommended action is that the Economic Advisory Committee be composed of the following members of council. Councillor blank, so we need to just decide that today, and that the Economic Advisory Committee be composed of the following members of staff: one member of Planning and Community Development Department, one member from Recreation and Community Services Department, and further that staff be directed to advertise for public members to participate on the Economic Advisory Committee who are of the local business and entrepreneur community.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to comment. This was discussed at great length at Business Retention Committee meeting and really had a lot of support from those present that we morph into this economic development. And certainly I would hope that we do get the business participation, because that unfortunately has been lacking somewhat in the past. And we really need to encourage our business sector to get involved in this if we want to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. I didn't get a mover, did I? No. Okay, well, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder on that. Deputy Mayor Dubo and Councillor Sainamont. All those in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. And site plan application.
And again, Madam Chair, I can assist you with that motion if you'd like.
I don't even know what an SPA is. but- Oh, yeah, site plan application,
Yes.
like I just said. Okay, yes, please take it
Okay,
over for me.
so the recommended action for the site plan application SPA 21-04 of 1 Jeffrey Street, Planning Report 2021-62 is that site plan approval be granted for the property at 1 Jeffrey Street, application SPA 21-04, in keeping with staff report PL 2021-62.
Is that it? You stopped rather abruptly there. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the planning director on this? Seeing none, I'll have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Betancourt, seconded by Councillor Sainamont. All those in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to referrals to upcoming agenda and staff. We have the Burns Crescent bylaw concerns, Community Development Fund, 1056 Fuller Avenue. Oh, too far away from the mic. Okay. I'll start from the beginning there. Burns Crescent bylaw concerns, Community Development Fund, 1056 Fuller Avenue, regulator and licensing options for short-term rentals, and Blue Drive Road options. And I guess we can take out the 1056 Fuller. The director's nodding her head, so if that's okay with everybody else, we can remove that since it was dealt with tonight. Anybody have anything they want to remove or add to the referrals? Seeing none. All those in, I didn't get a mover and a seconder, did I, Madam Clerk? Mover? Councillor Betancourt, seconded Councillor Rose. All those in favor? And carried. And there would be no questions from the media and public since there are none here. So I will hand this back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Levy. And with that, we will move on to 9, Section D, Finance and Corporate Services. And I will pass it to Councillor Sainamont.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. On our consent agenda, the recommended action that the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. The Huronia Municipal Airport, the interim task force report, 2020 Development Charges Reserve Fund Continuity Schedule, Finance 2021-23, the 2020 Debt Continuity Schedule, Finance Report 2021-24, the 2020 Building Department Annual Financial Report, Financial Report 2021-25, the 2020 Surplus Analysis Report, Financial Report 2021-28, the 2021 Quarter 3 Financial Summary, Finance Report 2021-31, and then the memo to Council, Report CAO 2021-15, Update number 6, CNCC Policing Costs. Any of those that you would like, people would like pulled for discussion? Yes. Councillor Betancourt.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair, the Huronia Airport interim task force report, if we could pull that.
We can certainly pull that. Any other items? Seeing none, if I could have a mover and a seconder for the other items, not including the airport. Councillor Rose, please. And seconder, Councillor Miot. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And so the Huronia Municipal Airport, did you have a question or do you want some clarification on the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was a good report. It makes reference to a few items that may be coming forward for budget consideration as part of the 2022 budget. And I was just wondering if those items have been completed and circulated to the municipalities as of yet, and whether they will be considered as part of the 2022 budget. Thank you.
I will refer that to our CAO, I believe, or the treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I'll speak first and then I'll ask our treasurer just to weigh in with respect to the regular operating budget. With respect to the specific items that are noted in the update, they are not available at this point in time for Penetanguishene's budget process. I would suggest that while it's a good thing that our budget process is advanced and is as efficient from a timing perspective as it is, I think we may be one of the only municipalities in this situation where the timing may not necessarily align with our budget process. I think in the coming months, when this might be available from the task force and from the Airport Commission, this may very well align nicely with the other municipal budget processes. But certainly in our case, at this point, it doesn't. Certainly, as we get information with respect to the specific components of this particular project, we will certainly bring them forward for council's information. I'm just going to let our treasurer speak to the regular operating request that we typically receive from the airport.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Bradaboncourt. I can just confirm that, yes, we have received the Huronia Airport Commission's 2022 budget request as far as their annual operating municipal contribution, as well as runway loan support, as well as a capital request for 2022. Having said that, we've received nothing else related to any other projects. And the Huronia Airport Commission budget request will be presented October 27th in draft 2 to Committee of the Whole.
Thank you.
Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Treasurer Carey, for that. The only thing I was remiss to mention is there is a lot involved with these particular studies and different components of the objectives that were laid out. So it certainly has been a lot of work that the task force has undertaken. And, you know, while it's taken a little bit more time than I think was originally anticipated, I think the end result is going to be a thorough review and a thorough report that the ownership group can entertain. And certainly, I think Councillor LaRose would concur that, you know, it's certainly a lot of work has been undertaken, and certainly we'll share that additional budget information as we get it.
Thank you very much for all that information. Is that all right with you, Councillor Bradaboncourt?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, we shall move on to the matters for consideration.
Sorry.
Oh, we didn't do the vote.
Yeah, we just need to receive that separate one for
Thank
information.
you, sorry. So if we could have a mover, thank you. Mr. Miot, Councillor Miot, and seconder, Councillor Cummings. All those in favor? Thank you. So moved. So move on to the matters for consideration. Item number 1, the 2020 Reserves and Reserve Fund Continuity Schedule, Finance Report 2021-26. The recommended action that the 2020 Reserves and Reserve Fund Continuity Schedule be approved as presented. If I could have a mover and a seconder, and then a mover, Councillor Miot, seconder. Oh, sorry, I didn't, you're too far away. Councillor LaRose. I know, any discussion, any questions? The only thing I'd like to say is that, oh, go ahead, George. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bradaboncourt.
Thank you, Councillor Sanawa. In the consent agenda portion of our meeting under Finance and General Government, there was a report dealing with the building department reserve. And in this particular section, there is one paragraph dealing with the building inspection reserve fund. And the chair and I talked about this at our section meeting, dealing with the gradual decline in this reserve. This reserve is intended to support the building department in lean times, and it has had a couple of years of lean time, so it draws on this reserve. The director indicated that 2021 so far seems to be a positive year, so the reserve may be receiving some funds at the end of the year to again support it, but the trend is a gradual decline, and as outlined in this report, it talks about without increased revenues, there may be support for taxation, or support from taxation, it may get into the red. So it's just something that certainly we're aware of at section. I think the municipality is attempting to do that with the bylaw that it passed a little earlier, increasing building department fees. But this reserve is one that I think we need to keep our eye on, because if it continues in that trend, we may find ourselves in the red as opposed to the black. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Betancourt. As I agree, and it was discussed at great length as well with at our section meeting in that same regard. Hopefully with the increased fees and the increased activity, it will increase and get back into a stronger position, but we will certainly be watching that. That being said, it's good to see the reserves that we do have on account, and that we are doing forward planning, which is excellent. So now we've had a mover and a seconder, and if I could have a vote, please, to accept. Thank you very much. Okay. Item number 2, the 2020 amortization estimate for tangible capital assets, Finance Report 2021-27. Recommended action that the 2020 amortization estimate for tangible capital assets report be adopted by resolution, and that the 2020 amortization estimate as reported in the 2020 annual audited financial statements be approved without a budget amendment. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Mayotte, Councillor LaRose, any discussion, any clarification? Seeing no questions, call for the vote. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. COVID-19 vaccination for council boards and committees. HR Report 2021-08. The recommended action that council approves option number 1 outlined within staff report HR 2021-08, which is to implement the COVID-19 vaccination policy as is for council boards and committees. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Dubo, a seconder, Councillor LaRose, and if I could call up Amy from HR, if you can give us a quick report, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a newbie here. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll try and do my best to provide a bit of an overview of our policy, what it entails. So as the CIO mentioned earlier, we did roll out a policy for staff recently. I believe it was October 4th that we rolled that out. So this is a similar policy to the staff policy, but there are some differences. So essentially, this policy encourages members of council, boards, and committees to become vaccinated. Just so you know, our senior management team and our municipal emergency control group have reviewed this policy and supported as well. So essentially, this policy would require that council, board, and committee members show proof of vaccination to HR by November 26th. You would also submit a verification of truth statement. So essentially what this statement is just signing off that
your vaccination receipt is legitimate and that you are truthfully representing your vaccination status. If a member is not vaccinated by choice and it's not a medical or human rights accommodation, that person would participate in an educational program on COVID-19 vaccinations and would undergo rapid antigen testing. And then council, board, and committee members who do not comply with the vaccination policy would not be permitted to attend in-person committee meetings. And I just want to mention too, there are a few differences. Like I said, although the policy is similar to the staff policy, there are of course some differences, which is why we wanted to do two separate policies. So for the staff policy, those that are unvaccinated will be tested at least twice per week, whereas in this policy, it leaves that more open-ended. Of course, as you know, council, committee, and boards don't meet as often, so that twice per week wasn't exactly applicable. And staff policy mentions staff and supervisor responsibilities. We just took that wording out. We also removed a section that mentioned about how staff can use sick time to attend vaccination appointments, because again, that just wasn't applicable. And I think the last point I want to mention, the non-compliance section of this or of the staff policy speaks to discipline up to potential termination if they were not to comply with the policy, whereas this policy speaks to not attending in-person meetings, like I said, and then potentially if they come to council and we could look at the town code of conduct if that were to happen. And again, that's kind of all I have on my notes, unless the CAO would like to add anything, or I would be happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think our human resources coordinator has done an excellent job at explaining it. So well done, Amy. And certainly, as she said, she'd be happy to take any questions, and I'll chime in as necessary.
Thank you very much, Amy. Good report. Any questions from council? Seeing none, that was good. I will call for the vote.
Thank you.
You're good. Thank you. All those in favor? And motion is passed. Thank you. Item number 4, there's a verbal update from the chair of the Police Services Board, re the 2021 PSB achievements. And the recommended action that the council receive the verbal update from the chair of the Police Services Board for information. And I will call on the chair of the Police Services Board, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board, in cooperation with our administrator, CAO Jeff Lees, and its board secretary, Jen Ballantyne, and the clerk, Stacy Cooper, updated its rules and procedures this year, something that hasn't been updated since 2012. It is an extensive document. There is a preamble that has been added to it that addresses the working relationships between the board, the town, and the Southern Georgian Bay OPP Detachment Commander. The legislative authorities are stated throughout this document, and protocols were updated, and in some cases, such as setting board budgets, setting goals and objectives, and protocols were added. To heighten the professionalism of this board, additions were added to the board's rules and procedures to include membership in professional associations, board education and training, and updating the board's website. If you have an opportunity, you should go to the board's website. It has been updated, and the job is absolutely fantastic. It shows future dates. It shows our goals and procedures and work initiatives in the coming years. It has a progress report from our Southern Georgian Bay OPP detachment and an action plan for 2020 to 2022. And if you're interested at all in what's happening in the town, the OPP news portal or release portal is pretty close to being an up-to-date information session of what's going on in the town. The board expanded training opportunities this year for our members, and we were able to participate in virtual conferences for the Police Association of Ontario, the Ontario Association for Police Services Board, and the Canadian Association of Police Governance. They were great conferences for those who attended. We are currently a member of the OAPSB, which is the Ontario Police Services Board. We have struck a subcommittee as of right now who is working on developing the board education, training, skills, and professional development. They're putting a plan together and we're going to present it at the next meeting. So that will allow us to have some additional training or future training for board members. The board is introducing a quarterly review and a review and monitoring of the OPP detachment commander's performance to align with the board's goals and objectives. And as necessary, we will prepare correspondence on matters of public safety for various government officials. We had an opportunity to participate with the regulations or suggestions for regulations for the new Community Policing Act. So our input was taken when they were deciding legislation for that. The board, as I'm doing now, is going to update the council annually on what the board is doing for that particular year. Any members of council or members of the public who wish to attend our meetings are more than welcome to observe our board meetings. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good report. So the recommended action is that council receive the verbal update from the chair of the Police Services Board for information. If I could have a mover, please. Councillor Levy, and seconder, Councillor LaRose. All those in favor? And so passed. Thank you. Referrals to upcoming agenda. Referrals at the Finance and Corporate Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. We have the Huronia Airport Commission Roadmap Update, Procedural Bylaw Review, Presentations and Delegations, OPP Policing Costs, and the CNCC Recovery. The presentations and delegations was dealt with, so I think we can remove that. And we're still waiting for more information from the Huronia Airport, so I believe that should stay on. And the OPP, that's just ongoing. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for, thank you, Councillor Cummings, Councillor LaRose, all those in favor? Good, so passed. Thank you very much. Any questions from the media and public? No. I'll refer it back to you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. And with that, members of council and staff, committee of the whole is adjourned. Yes.
Just before you adjourn, I wanted to compliment staff on what they've done here. It's been very great to actually have a council meeting with everyone present. So thank you to the staff that were responsible to do this.
Absolutely. And then we'll give Sarah and Stacy 5 minutes to get things organized, and we will be going into our special council meeting in 5 minutes.